In every corner of the city, there are secrets, stories that hide in plain sight, waiting in the shadows, waiting for someone brave enough to witness them. And tonight, we step into that darkness once again. Welcome to Dynamic Dark. Welcome to a brand new horror experience. Welcome to episode 51. I'm Aditya, and tonight, I bring you 3 terrifying, completely new creepypasta stories, each stranger, darker, and more unnerving than the last. Fresh tales. Fresh week. Fresh nightmares. If you are new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you dare to face what comes next. Tonight's stories blur the line between reality and the unknown. Each one a descent into urban darkness and modern horror. Today's first story, Reflection That Wasn't. Today's second story, Apartment Above. And today's final story, Night Janitor. If you crave horror that blends supernatural chills with suspenseful tension and psychological dread, you are exactly where you need to be. Because this is Dynamic Dark. For the best experience, put on your earphones, turn off the lights, and let the shadows, suspense, and fear consume you. Now let's begin with our first story, Reflection That Wasn't. Alone in her apartment, Elena stood before the mirror, brushing her long dark hair with slow, deliberate strokes. The night pressed against the windows like a living thing, and the dim light of the single lamp cast long, wavering shadows across the room. Each sound of the city outside, distant sirens, the hum of passing cars, the occasional bark of a dog seemed muted, swallowed by the thick, suffocating stillness inside her apartment. As she moved the brush through her hair, she noticed faint distortions in the mirror's reflection. For a brief moment, a shadow flickered behind her, just at the edge of her vision, disappearing whenever she turned her head. She shook her head, forcing herself to focus on mundane tasks, brushing her hair, adjusting her nightgown, checking the reflection of her teeth, yet a cold chill ran down her spine, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. The room felt impossibly large and silent, almost empty, as though the walls themselves were observing her. Every small noise, the brush scraping through her hair, the soft rustle of fabric echoed unnaturally, bouncing off unseen corners of the apartment. Elena's heartbeat quickened as she realized that something in the reflection was moving independently of her own motions. A faint, unnatural smile curved across her reflection's lips, though she had made no such expression. Her eyes widened, and her hand froze in midair, clutching the brush as if it were her only anchor to reality. The lamp flickered violently, casting her shadow across the walls in distorted, impossible shapes. For a moment, the shadow seemed to stretch and twist, forming tall, black silhouettes that disappeared when she blinked. Minutes crawled into what felt like hours. The mirror no longer reflected only her. Vague shapes lurked behind, shifting in the darkness, pressing against the surface, their presence heavy and menacing. Elena took a cautious step back, brushing strands of hair from her face, but the reflection remained, staring, almost sentient. The air grew colder, heavier. A faint whisper tickled her ears, so soft she thought she imagined it, "You can't leave, not yet." The shadows behind the glass deepened, forming dark outlines of figures that seemed to pulse with life, just beyond comprehension. Every flicker of the lamp revealed more, twisted forms that resembled human shapes, but with hollow eyes and elongated limbs, moving with impossible fluidity. Her breaths became shallow. She turned to leave the room, but the door creaked slowly shut, seemingly of its own accord. Panic surged, but Elena forced herself to remain calm, forcing her eyes back to the mirror. the reflection had changed, it no longer mimicked her exactly. It leaned closer, tilting its head, and those hollow, dark eyes locked onto hers. Time dissolved. Seconds became minutes. The apartment outside the mirror faded into darkness. All that remained was the mirror, the lamp flickering, and her reflection that wasn't hers. Shadows called, whispers lingered in the corners, and the night pressed in, thick and suffocating, leaving Elena trapped with the unknown presence in the glass. Alone, yet not alone. Asterisk. Suddenly, Elena's reflection smiled, a smile she had not given. Her heart skipped a beat. The room, dimly lit by the flickering lamp, seemed to pulse with a presence she couldn't see. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, twisting and writhing as if alive. The mirror reflected not just her image, but something else, something waiting. She froze, staring into her own eyes, trying to convince herself it was a trick of the light. But the smile remained, impossibly wide, slow, deliberate, a smile that had no owner but hers. A cold shiver ran down her spine, and the hairs on her arms stood on end. She could hear faint whispers, like words brushing past her ears, too soft to catch, but heavy with intent. The lamp flickered violently, casting moving shadows that seemed to reach out toward her. She stepped back, heart pounding, but the reflection mirrored her movements, only slightly delayed, as if it were alive, independent. Something dark shifted behind the reflection, a tall, thin silhouette, black as inky smoke, stretching impossibly toward the ceiling, with limbs that twisted unnaturally. Minutes dragged like hours. Elena tried to turn away, but her gaze was locked. The room grew colder, every breath visible in the dim light, swirling like mist. The shadow behind the reflection stretched closer, elongating, tendrils of darkness curling into the corners of the room. Her own reflection began to move in ways she couldn't control, tilting its head, leaning forward, smiling wider. She tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. The whispers grew louder, layered, echoing off the walls. It was no longer just a reflection, it was a presence, alive and malevolent, feeding off her fear. The shadows danced across the walls, forming black, slender figures that flickered just at the edge of her vision. Time dissolved. Every second dragged. Elena's eyes darted between the room and the mirror, the boundary between reality and reflection blurring. The shadows pressed in, the lamp flickered, and the smile, that smile, remained. She realized with a cold, creeping dread, this presence was no trick of light. It had claimed her reflection. And she could not escape it, not tonight, not ever. Asterisk. She steps back in fear, but the reflection moves closer, reaching out its hand. Elena's breath froze in her throat. Her real body had moved back, she felt her heel hit the cold floor. But inside the mirror, the reflection leaned forward. Slowly. Intentionally. Its hand lifted, fingers long and unnatural, stretching toward the glass as if it wanted to break through. Her heart hammered violently, every beat echoing in her ears. The lamp in the room flickered again, casting distorted shadows that trembled across the walls. The reflection's smile widened to wide, and the eyes darkened, as if hollowed by something that wasn't human at all. Elena whispered, "Stop." But the reflection didn't stop. It pressed its hand against the inside of the mirror, and the glass began to ripple like water disturbed by a single touch. The surface shimmered and warped, bending reality itself. She took another step back. The reflection stepped forward. The room grew colder. The air felt heavy. Shadows gathered behind the reflection, slender, tall, stretched shapes drifting like living darkness. Their outlines flickered in and out of existence, as if they were trying to attach themselves to her reflection or escape with it. Elena tried to run, but her body refused to move. She felt trapped, held in place by an unseen weight. Her reflection tilted its head slowly, observing her with a twisted curiosity, then its hand pressed harder against the mirror. A soft cracking sound filled the room. The glass didn't shatter, it cracked inward, as if something behind it was pushing out. Darkness seeped from the fracture. Not smoke, not shadow, something colder, something alive. The reflection leaned further forward, its face inches from the glass, its smile stretched into something impossibly sharp. The hand reached through the crack, fingers long, black, whisper silent, drifting toward her like a living nightmare. Elena gasped. The room pulsed with a low hum, like something ancient had awakened. Her reflection mouthed words she could not hear, but she could feel them. They vibrated in her bones. She stumbled backward, finally breaking free of whatever held her still. The lamp flickered violently. The walls seemed to breathe. And the reflection kept coming, its hand emerging further, its face pushing against the cracking surface, its eyes locking onto hers with predatory stillness. Elena realized the truth. It didn't want to mimic her. It wanted to replace her. Asterisk. In the morning, tiny wet handprints appear on the mirror, though it was spotless the entire night. Elena hadn't slept. Not really. She had spent the entire night sitting on her bed, staring at the mirror across the room, waiting to see if the reflection moved again. But the mirror remained still, silent, empty. By sunrise, she convinced herself that maybe it had all been a hallucination, fear twisting her senses, exhaustion exaggerating shadows. She walked toward the mirror slowly, hoping that in the daylight everything would make sense again. But then she froze. Right in the center of the glass were tiny handprints. Small, wet, fresh, as if a child had pressed their hands on the mirror just moments ago. The droplets trickled downward, leaving thin trails across the flawless surface. Elena whispered, "No, no, no. I cleaned this last night." And she had perfectly spotless. She remembered wiping it twice. Her fingers trembled as she moved closer. The handprints were too small to be hers, far too small. A child's hands. But Elena lived alone. She reached out and touched one. Cold. The moisture clung to her fingertip, real, undeniable. A sudden chill swept across the room. The lamp flickered even in daylight. Shadows in the corners deepened, almost pulsing, as if reacting to the discovery. Elena stepped back, heart pounding. The tiny prints began to fade, slowly evaporating on their own. As if invisible fingers were wiping them away from the inside of the mirror. She blinked. And then, just for a split second, she saw something. A silhouette. Small. Child-sized. Standing behind her reflection. Slender, pitch black, motionless, watching. Elena gasped and spun around. The room behind her was empty. Silent. Still. But the mirror no longer looked innocent. It looked alive, like an entrance to something that had been waiting all night for the light to return, only to leave its mark behind. The last tiny droplet slid down the glass and disappeared. Elena backed away, fear twisting deep into her chest. Because the handprints were not just wet. They were fresh. And whatever made those prints had just touched the mirror from the other side. That night, the apartment felt different, heavier, as if the air itself didn't want to move. Elena tried convincing herself it was just exhaustion, just her imagination running wild after what she saw earlier. She turned off the lights, leaving only that dim lamp glowing near the mirror, the same mirror that had betrayed her just hours ago. She sat on the edge of her bed, knees drawn up, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the city far below. But then, a soft tick echoed from the mirror. Then another. Not like glass cracking, more like something lightly tapping from the inside. Elena froze. Slowly, the faintest breath fogged the corner of the mirror, even though the room was warm, even though she wasn't anywhere near it. The fog spread, tracing the outline of a small hand. A childlike palm. Fingers dragging down the glass with an almost playful slowness. Elena whispered, "Stop, please just stop." But the mirror didn't listen. Instead, the temperature dropped sharply, cold enough that her breath now came out white. The lamp flickered once, twice, then steadied, but the room didn't feel steady at all. The reflection inside the mirror began to shift. Not fully visible, but an outline, a dark silhouette crouched behind the glass, as if waiting for her to notice. As if enjoying it. Elena stepped back, but the shadow leaned forward, closer, clearer, almost pressing its head against the inside of the mirror surface. Its presence filled the room with an unnatural silence. Then, without warning, a voice seeped through, not loud, not shouted, but soft, cold, and terrifyingly calm. A voice that didn't belong to anyone living. It whispered, "You can leave." Elena's eyes widened. Her heart, racing a moment ago, suddenly felt like it had dropped into her stomach. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only listen. The voice continued, now closer, as though the speaker were inches from her ear. "But I won't." The reflection smiled, a slow, unnatural stretch of blackened lips forming a shape Elena had never made in her life. The fog on the glass thickened, the handprints multiplying, pressing outward as if several unseen figures were trapped just beneath the surface. The mirror rippled faintly. Like water. Like something was trying to push its way through. The lamp dimmed again, almost dying, as the shadows in the reflection leaned forward, multiple elongated figures, black and thin, crowding behind Elena's mirrored image, whispering things she couldn't understand. Their heads tilted at odd angles, their fingers dragging across the inner surface of the glass, leaving long wet streaks. Elena backed into the wall, trembling, whispering, "Please stop. Please." But the mirror only whispered back, "You left me once. You won't leave again." The final word stretched through the room, echoing far longer than it should have. Twisting, warping, lingering until Elena could feel it in her bones. The silhouettes faded slowly, almost melting into darkness, but the smile in the reflection remained. Unmoving. Patient. Waiting. The room returned to stillness. But Elena knew it wasn't over. Because as she finally gathered the courage to close her eyes, the mirror whispered one last time, softer than a breath, "I'm already out." She freezes, breath caught in her chest. The mirror no longer feels like an object, it feels like an eye. An open, watching eye. At first, the shadow inside the glass only shifts when she moves. A delayed imitation. A faint echo of her presence. But tonight, something changes. It doesn't wait for her. It doesn't mirror her. It stands on its own, tall, patient, and absolutely still. She steps backward. The glass stays calm. But the silhouette inside leans forward, closer, clearer, its shape sharpening against the dim glow of the room. Her heartbeat grows louder. Louder than the silence. Louder than her breath. She blinks once, and the shadow blinks late. She blinks again, and this time, it doesn't blink at all. That's when the truth hits her, cold, heavy, and undeniable. The thing inside the mirror isn't trapped. It isn't copying her. It isn't restricted by the frame. It's watching her with the patience of something ancient, waiting with the stillness of something intelligent, and following her with the certainty of something that has already chosen its target. Because even when she turns away, even when she leaves the room, even when she walks down the silent hallway, the reflection inside the mirror doesn't fade. It shifts. It angels. It adjusts. It follows her without ever leaving the glass. And in that moment, she finally understands, terrifyingly, completely, that the shadow never cared about the mirror at all. It only cared about her. Today's second story, Apartment Above. Every night, just past midnight, Ethan Cole freezes in his bed as the sound begins again, soft, careful footsteps pacing across the ceiling. Not rushed. Not random. Almost deliberate. At first, he tells himself it's the building settling, or maybe someone moving furniture late at night. But the rhythm never changes. The steps always start in the far left corner, walk slowly to the hallway, pause, then return. Like a pattern. Like a routine. Like someone pacing with purpose. He tries to ignore it. He turns up the fan. He buries his head under the pillow. But the whispers follow, the faint sound of a voice murmuring through the floorboards. Too soft to understand, but too close to be imagination. The worst part. The apartment above his has been empty for 6 months. No tenant. No furniture. No lights. Just darkness and dust. And yet every night, someone walks there. Someone whispers there. Someone never left. Ethan grabs his flashlight, creeping to the hallway door. The light flickers, shadows dancing across the cracked ceiling. He listens, heart pounding as the footsteps stop. Then the whispering begins again, almost teasing him, almost daring him to look up. He climbs the stairs slowly, each creak of the wood sounding louder than thunder in the silent building. At the top, the apartment door is closed, completely down. But he can feel it. Something waiting. Something aware of him. Something alive in the empty space above. The whispers grow louder. Words he cannot understand slip through the thin cracks under the door. Ethan hesitates, sweat sliding down his temple. He knows the building is empty. He knows it's impossible, but he cannot deny what he hears. Cannot deny what he feels pressing down on him from above. And in that moment, the shadows behind him stretch unnaturally, as if the darkness itself is observing him, waiting to see if he dares to knock or dare to leave. He realizes tonight is not just any night. Tonight, the apartment above wants attention. And Ethan Cole is the only one left in the building to give it. One night, Ethan Cole's fear overtakes his hesitation. He walks to the top of the stairs, heart pounding, and knocks on the door of the apartment above. Just one gentle knock, but the sound echoes like a gunshot in the silent building. He waits. Nothing. No footsteps. No whispers. Just the oppressive quiet pressing down on him like a weight he cannot lift. He tries the doorknob. Locked. But the lock doesn't click, it feels wrong. Too old. Too cold. Like it hasn't been touched in decades. Ethan steps back, flashlight shaking in his hand, the beam catching peeling wallpaper and faint scratches near the door. Then he hears it again, soft whispers, just under his ear, though the hallway is empty. Words he can't comprehend, phrases that twist in his mind. He swallows hard. Morning comes. The sunlight streams weakly through his window, but the unease doesn't lift. Something tells him he must know the truth. He goes outside, staring up at the building. And then the records hit him like ice water. The apartment above has been unoccupied for 10 years. 10 years. No tenants. No furniture. No one has lived there since, well before he ever moved in. The footsteps. The whispers. All of it. Impossible. Unreal. And yet, last night, he knocked. And someone or something was there. He tries to shake it off, but even in broad daylight, the hallway feels darker, longer, colder. Shadows linger where they shouldn't. The air carries a subtle vibration, faint whispers trailing behind him wherever he walks. He knows one thing, the apartment above doesn't follow normal rules. It watches. It waits. And it has been waiting for him. Ethan Cole's fear has grown too strong to ignore. The footsteps, the whispers, the impossible presence above, he needs proof. He walks to the living room, shaking slightly, and pulls out a small security camera. His hands tremble as he sets it just outside his apartment door, aiming at the hallway and the old staircase leading up to the apartment above. He double-checks the angle, the battery, and the recording settings. Everything seems normal, mundane, yet the air around him feels charged, almost alive. Shadows cling to corners, stretching unnaturally along the walls and ceiling, as if aware of what he is doing. He shakes his head, trying to tell himself it's just nerves. Just imagination. That night, he sits on his bed, flashlight in hand, staring at the live feed on his phone. The hallway is empty. The door to the apartment above is closed. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Then, from the corner of the feed, he notices something. A flicker. A movement so subtle he almost misses it. The shadow, thin and dark, just beyond the light's reach, shifting ever so slightly. It doesn't walk, it doesn't run, it lingers, watching. The whispers begin again, faint at first, then layering like echoes of multiple voices, none of them human. Ethan grips the phone tighter, feeling a cold sweat running down his temple. He leans closer, and the shadow stretches, elongates, pressing against the boundaries of the hallway, almost testing the limits of reality. Minutes pass. Nothing else happens. He exhales. Relief. He tries to laugh at himself, and then the whispers intensify. Clearer. Louder. Right through the camera, it seems. Words he cannot comprehend, but they feel urgent. Dangerous. Ethan slowly backs away from the feed. The shadow seems to react, tilts its head, moves just a fraction. But it's impossible. It shouldn't be able to respond to a camera. It shouldn't be aware. And yet it is. He makes a decision. He must check the door. Must see what is really there. His legs shake, heart racing as he approaches the top of the stairs. The camera records every creak, every flicker of the lamp, every stretched shadow along the ceiling. And then he hears it, a soft, Almost playful tap, tap, tap directly above him, right where the apartment has been empty for 10 years. Ethan freezes, paralyzed by the impossible truth. He looks back at the camera, then at the hallway. The shadow lingers, slightly behind the door, waiting, patient. Watching. Following him. And in that moment, he realizes the horrifying reality. Installing the camera didn't protect him. It didn't capture proof. It invited it closer. The apartment above has been waiting. And now it knows he is watching. It's 3 a.m. Ethan Cole, exhausted and terrified, sits in his bed, eyes glued to the security camera feed. The hallway is quiet, too quiet. Every creak, every whisper from previous nights has vanished into a heavy, unnatural silence. Then, the feed flickers. At first, he thinks it's the battery or a glitch. But then, he sees her. A small, transparent figure appears at the top of the stairs. A little girl, pale and ethereal, her feet not touching the steps. She floats slowly downward, her long hair drifting around her like mist, eyes wide and black, staring directly at him through the camera lens. Her gaze feels alive, intelligent, aware of his every movement. Ethan's breath catches. He grips the edge of his bed, nails digging into the sheets. The hallway lamp flickers violently, shadows stretching across the walls in unnatural, elongated forms. The little girl's figure seems to ripple the shadows, twisting them, bending them toward the stairs, toward him. The whispers return, soft, unintelligible, layered, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. They wrap around the room like smoke, thickening the air, chilling him to the bone. Ethan feels a cold gust sweep past him, though all windows are closed, the apartment sealed. The camera feed captures more than just the girl. Black ghostly shapes lurk in the corners, elongated silhouettes leaning from the shadows, twisting in impossible ways. The little girl floats closer, lips moving, whispering words he cannot hear but understands all the same. She is inviting him, beckoning him toward the stairs. He tries to turn away, but the shadows seem to follow, stretching, writhing, almost pressing against the walls, the ceiling, the floor. The entire hallway pulses with a dark, unnatural rhythm, synchronized with the faint, haunting melody of whispers. Ethan's body shakes. He knows he can't leave. He can't run. The little girl hovers at the bottom of the stairs now, staring. The camera feed flickers, the shadows twist tighter, and the cold thickens, pressing into him like the hands of something unseen. Every instinct screams at him to flee, but he is paralyzed, mesmerized by her gaze. And then she tilts her head slightly, a dark smile forming. The whispers grow louder, now clearly layered voices, almost laughing, almost mocking him. The shadows stretch from the corners, converging slowly toward the staircase. The little girl floats closer and closer, gliding silently, pulling the dark shapes with her until the frame is nearly filled with black, twisted forms. Ethan realizes this is no longer just haunting. This is an invasion. The apartment above, the shadows, the whispers, the girl, they have been waiting for him. And now, through the camera, they know he is watching. The last image on the screen is her black, unblinking eyes staring directly at him before the feed abruptly cuts to static. Weeks turn into months, and Ethan Cole finally decides he's had enough. The footsteps, the whispers, the constant knocking from the empty apartment above, it's too much. So he packs his things, breaks his lease, and moves into a new apartment on the other side of the city. For the first time in weeks, he sleeps with a little hope. A new place. A fresh start. Silence at last. But on the very first night, at exactly 3:11 a.m., he hears it. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps slow, dragging, deliberate, drifting above his ceiling. He freezes. This building has no upstairs. His unit is on the top floor. He moves again. A second apartment. Then a third. Then a fourth. Every single time. That first night, the footsteps return. Sometimes soft, like a child walking. Sometimes heavier, like someone pacing in anger. Sometimes right behind him. He tries to ignore it. He tries sleeping with the lights on. He tries music, earphones, TV, white noise. But nothing covers it. Because the steps aren't just sounds in the room. They're following him. In his living room. In his kitchen. In his bathroom. Behind him in the hallway. Outside his door when he leaves. Inside his dreams when he sleeps. And now, they have learned something new. Something was. They breathe. Late at night, when he turns the corner into a dark room, he doesn't just hear footsteps anymore. He hears the faint sound of someone breathing inches from his ear. Slow, wet, cold. And he knows. Wherever he goes, whatever place he runs to, the thing from the apartment above is no longer bound to floors or walls. It has learned to walk with him. It has learned to see what he sees. It has learned to stand where he stands. And now, it waits for him to stop running. Because the moment he finally does, it won't be footsteps he hears next. It'll be a voice. Quite close and familiar. He realizes she never left, the apartment wasn't haunted, he was. And now, the black ghosts are bound to him forever. Tonight's final story, Night Janitor. Every night, an old janitor walks the silent halls of a long-abandoned school. The classrooms are empty, the lights flicker, and the building hasn't had students in years, yet he still hears soft footsteps behind him. Whispers drift through the halls, doors creak open on their own, and something moves in the darkness, always just out of sight. He isn't alone. Not in this school. Not at night. As he turns the corner, he freezes. A figure is sweeping the hallway slowly, rhythmically, wearing an old school janitor's uniform from decades ago. The man moves like he belongs there, but the school records show no staff since the building shut down. And as the janitor watches, the figure never looks up, yet somehow knows he's there. When he finally gathers the courage to step closer, the figure simply dissolves into the dark. No footsteps. No movement. Just a sudden drop in temperature and faint, icy whispers curling around his ears as if warning him to never walk that hallway again. One night, the lights go out completely. The janitor freezes. In the pitch-black hallway, a faint, childlike laughter echoes from the lockers. It's high, hollow, and impossibly close. He strains his ears, but no one is there. The lockers tremble slightly, doors rattling as if something invisible is peeking through. Shadows twist in corners, long and thin, subtly moving toward him. He realizes he isn't alone, and whatever is here has been waiting for him. The next day, all the lockers are locked from the inside. One holds a note, "Thanks for keeping me company. See you tonight." He realizes the black ghosts aren't just in the school, they're bound to the building and to him. There is no escape. That was the end of episode 51 of Dynamic Dark. If you enjoyed these terrifying stories, make sure to comment below which story scared you the most. The best comment will be pinned by me, Aditya. So, don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications bell if you dare to see what comes next. And share with your friends and family too. Or you can suggest a topic for the next episode, like a foreign urban legend, haunted place, or any other creepy horror story. The suggestion with the most likes might be featured in the next episode. Until then, keep listening to terrifying stories, because we'll be back soon with episode 52. And in the next episode, we'll bring you creepypasta horror stories. Yes, an English episode this time. Stay tuned and keep watching the horror episodes of Dynamic Dark. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new horror episode. New fears, new darkness, and new secrets. Join the Dynamic Dark family with 3 brand new terrifying stories.